Hi and welcome to Conversations with Robyn. And we're filming at the Sydney Mind Body Festival. And today we have with us Lesley Crossingham.
Hello, Robyn.
Hi, and thank you so much for agreeing to be with us.
Oh, happy to be here.
Lesley, in one sentence, how would you describe what you do?
So hard to put what I do in one sentence.
Because you're an author?
Yes, that's right. I'm an author, I'm an artist, I'm a singer, I'm a songwriter. I do all sorts of different kinds of work, and I just embrace life fully on all different levels. I like to keep busy, I like to write, I like to share my experiences with people. But most importantly, I'm a clairvoyant. And what that simply means, just a French word that means to see clearly, what it simply means is that I'm able to shift my consciousness from this plane to other planes and receive information about either things that I'm interested in or things about a person that would come and consult me about their own life and their own pathway.
Okay. Now, do you feel that a lot of your learnings that you have gained have been because you've had a fairly international upbringing?
Yes.
Where were you born and where did you do school and university?
Well, I was born in Britain, but even as a child, my parents moved from place to place, and they were from two different parts of the country as well. So I went to the primary school in England, I went to high school in South Africa, and I went to university in Canada. So even my education's all over the place as well. And I've travelled right around the world. I've lived on every continent for long periods of time.
Okay. And what age did you discover that part of your heritage is Native American Indian?
Well, it was always sort of one of those soft whispers in the family. I always had a suspicion because I'd find these photographs with the face cut out and it was all whispered about. But I only actually knew about it in my teens once I discovered, I went through paperwork which I wasn't supposed to go through. And that then set me on this quest. You know, sometimes when you're very young you think, once I understand my bloodline, I'll understand myself. When we grow older we realise that's not the case, but at that age I wanted to go in search of that. I wanted to find my ancestry, because I look so different than every other member of my family. And so I went to Canada to research my great-grandfather, who was from the Cree tribe, and went on this long journey as a journalist working for Native American Indian-owned newspapers. My job was to travel in northern Canada up to the Arctic Circle, interview elders, go to ceremonies, and write these stories up for the little newspaper I worked for. And what annoys a lot of people is I got paid for that as well.
Now, in that part of your life journey, you were initiated into a number of the Native American rituals.
Yes.
What were some of those?
Well, one of my first experiences was the Sweat Lodge. I don't know whether you've heard of that.
Yes.
It is a ceremony of great spiritual depth. But the problem was I didn't understand it at all, and I even tried to take my shorthand notepad in there.
That would be very wet.
Most viewers wouldn't do this. But that was my first experience, and I really went into it very raw. I'd done no research. I just went out to the Indian reservation and just watched and observed, and took on the experiences without any bookwork. And so in many respects it was the best way for me to have done that, because you can get very lost in the theories and you can sit down and you can understand everything on a theoretical basis but understand absolutely nothing.
Because you're not getting it.
No, it's from the heart, it's from the experience.
Yeah.
You know, and so as soon as I threw that away and went into the experience, I had some amazing experiences that opened me up on many different spiritual levels.
And you became a pipe carrier also.
That's right.
What's that to do with?
Well, what that means is you become like a priest or a priestess of the traditional earth-based ways. And it's our full ceremony, because you need to understand certain levels of consciousness before you become an official pipe carrier. Many people have a pipe, but that's not the same as being a pipe carrier, because it's an actual ceremony. And what that means is I have the right to lead certain ceremonies, such as the Sweat Lodge and many others as well.
Okay.
Yes.
If we move on to, because you have just published this most amazing book, could you tell us how it came to be, and then obviously a little bit about it?
Okay, well, this is a big surprise for me. Although I've been able to channel, and what all that means is that you can connect to other realms of consciousness for many, many years. I started to feel a presence, a feminine presence around me about 3 or 4 years ago. I ignored it initially, and then it became more assertive within the last 2 years. And then finally this presence introduced herself as Mary Magdalene and asked me to please sit down and take notes and bring through this book. And I thought at first, this is ridiculous. And then I realised, no, I better stop resisting this, because it's very difficult to resist this energy. And I allowed the book to come through. And once I fully embraced the energy, it was quite a journey. Because for me, I'm a full body clairvoyant, and what I mean by that is it's not just that I receive it in my mind, it's like my whole body returns to another place and time. So for me, I was taken back 2,000 years to Jerusalem, and I felt the stones beneath my feet. I smelt food cooking. I heard dogs barking in the distance. I heard the horses neighing. I hear other voices in the background. And I became part of the whole energy field of 2,000 years ago as an observer, but in a very personal way. I literally felt I was there. And I got caught up in the events. Of course, this story is Mary's story. It's the feminine story. It's the other side of the Christ consciousness, the feminine side of Christ consciousness. The side that's been suppressed and repressed now for 2,000 years. Mm-hmm. And so I followed Mary. She showed me her journey, her life journey, how she trained in Egypt as a priestess in the Temple of Isis and learned ancient secret ways that have been, again, repressed. How she connected with Jesus, and they, of course, created a sacred marriage. A marriage not based on creating a bloodline, but a marriage based on creating a spirit line. Mm. And from there, of course, through the crucifixion and to her journey to Southern France, where she lived out the final parts of her days.
Okay, I'd like to come back to the book, but I often ask this question of people that use clairvoyancy as one of their gifts. For some viewers who may be listening to this, it just may be all like...
I understand.
What would you say to them, not asking people to absolutely believe without, questioning, but what would you say to them to the possibility of the gifts that you have?
Well, what I would say is that I think we need to keep in focus the fact that there is an eternal essence within ourselves. Even Einstein talks about this, that energy cannot be destroyed. Mm-hmm. It can be, however, transformed. Mm-hmm. And so within us is an energy, and you all know this when you see a dead animal. It's not because it's not moving. The energy's gone. It seems flatter somehow, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. We've all seen this happen. And there is within ourselves an eternal soul. And this eternal soul is not affected by time. It's not affected by what we see as this particular world. I often describe it to people like the old-fashioned gramophone records, if you remember them. Mm-hmm. With this, we can take the stylus and move it to any groove on that gramophone record and hear the music at the beginning, the middle, the end, or any other way that we want to. So it is with the true world, the spiritual world. If we have the ability, we could move our own connection from this particular place and time into the past or into the future. Mm-hmm. And if we do that, then we can have a deeper understanding of what true history is. Mm-hmm. I think it's important to remember that history is written by the victors. It's written by those who have oppressed and suppressed.
And it's manipulated.
Yes, exactly.
To
it's
what they want to, yeah.
I know that. I've been a journalist. I know how it works.
Of course, that's why you would have had that background that you had.
Absolutely, I know how it works. I've done it myself. You put a little bit of spin on something.
Yes.
You emphasise something more than it should be.
Yeah.
And before you know it, you have this terrible fear going through the populace that this dreadful thing will occur.
Yes.
And meantime, it's just a beat-up, as we call it in the media. We know this, we do this, we get the good headline. But those headlines become history. And before you know it, it's supposedly common knowledge that this thing occurred, when in actuality it's totally out of balance.
Yeah, yeah. And hence some of the confusion we have on our planet
Absolutely.
now. With your gift, when did your gift first become apparent as a young person?
When I was 7. I had the whooping cough, which is, if anybody's ever had that, it's the most dreadful illness. I couldn't breathe properly, and one of the ways that we connect spiritually is through breath work. So I was the age of 7, and I'd put in my bedroom to just get better and not able to breathe correctly. And because of this, I started to see spiritual energies. In this case, they appeared to me as little fairies on my footboard of my bed. I could see them dancing along there trying to cheer me up. So I mentioned this to my mother and grandmother, both of whom were in the spiritual movement. They, of course, recognised them as the nature spirits or fairies and gave me crayons and paper and said, draw them for us. I discovered very early on that when you connect with an energy through art or through conversation, the energy expands because you put your energy into the energy and you form a connection. So as I drew the little fairies, I noticed they got sharper and easier to see, and I could start to hear them. This changed as I grew older. I started to see angels and what we often refer to as spirit guides around people. And again, I was very fortunate. I had a mother and grandmother who said, no, that's normal, that's okay. Keep seeing them, receive that information. And so it grew from there.
Okay, we'll take a break and we'll come back and hear more about Lesley's journey. Back with you.